Afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and present this. I noticed there were a few other Scottish voices earlier on, so I suppose it's very generous of you really to bring all these people from Scotland wherever they fetched up. And I was just thinking actually that with the changes in temperatures, we're going to have to give you guys a welcome when you come up and follow your species and your all the intellectual property associated with the microfauna and so on. So I guess we have to be good hosts in turn in the coming decades. So anyway, I'd like to talk a little bit about some work that. Partly Stirling has been involved in. I know it's a well-known marine science centre, being in such a location, but work that is going on more generally with the UK Foresight programme and also with the Food and Agriculture Organisation, some of the other international bodies concerning the future of food and the future of fisheries and aquaculture. It's rather less quantitative than my colleague's talk earlier on, Manuel's talk. It's a bit more qualitative, let's say, but it is an attempt to try and set out some of the ideas and issues underlying the future directions that fisheries, and particularly aquaculture, might be seen to go in globally. So the initial ideas were set very much around the UK Foresight programme, and for those of you who haven't come across this, this global future of food and farming to 2050, there's a lot of stuff on the website, the Foresight programme website. Lots of material, a certain amount of stuff to do with fisheries and aquaculture, a lot on population, on food resources, on energy resources, a whole range of other issues. But we've attempted, a group of people associated with this have attempted to pick up some of the ideas a little bit further and see what we can do about getting some sense of what was going to happen with fisheries. The background really for the Food Futures program was really this idea that there were a number of things happening round about now that made it useful to look at food. The key things were the convergence of threats, the fact that the food system was failing to deliver long-term goals, Millennium Development Goals, for example, and that decisions taken now would have a very strong impact on the ability to achieve any kind of success in our aspirations for the future. The graphs here simply show the projections for population, which I'm sure you know well enough. This target of sort of 9 billion people by 2050. The possibility that the population would level off sometime after that. So in a sense, the idea that if we can keep things going and if we can get things right up to that point, and we can cope with climate change, then we might have the means of defining a food system which was going to be genuinely sustainable over the longer term. The graph in the middle is I'll get this eventually. The graph in the middle is the Engels curve, the description of the fact that food consumption rises with GDP. It's not a big story, that. But the key point that the quality of food demanded increases, and the push that this would mean towards meat consumption and possibly fish consumption. And one of the interesting things that we started to look at a little bit was the greenhouse gas implications, let's say, of choices of consuming fish over beef or pork or chicken, whatever. And there's some interesting consequences. What the food study looked at was whether, first of all, we could get the food supplies and the prices at which food would be available. The story on that was, well, yes, we can produce enough food by 2050 to get our 9 billion or even 10 billion people fed. Prices in real terms will be higher, but more or less attainable within expected changes in economic growth. Price volatility, well, we're sort of seeing another stimulus for that this year, would be an important governance issue and would need continued attention. Climate change and resource constraints would be significant drivers of the way that things could be done for food supply. And the key points that came out of this were first of all, that we would have to have an overall target of sustainable intensification. We would have to intensify how we did things. We would need to know more. We would have to be more clever. We would have to have more research and more development to be able to get things to work effectively. Access to food would be a critical issue. We could feed 9 billion people, but quite easily 1 or 2 billion people could continue to be hungry. And so we have an interaction really of the delivery of food and the politics of food access, and the need to make a strong focus in those directions. And of course the links with biodiversity and the need to maintain biodiversity, the arguments for which are becoming more clear as with every passing month, is something which require specific attention. The ideas about fisheries, first of all, we had some work done within the food program, and then FAO itself decided they wanted to pick up some of the ideas to help a little bit with their own sense of where they were going and the directions they would take. And so the ideas really were to look at the sector and its contribution to global food, to look at the development directions and trends, and set out some ideas about strategies and international development plans, look at potential interactions with key countries and donors, and linking it with other development processes, and setting up some kind of a framework for the future of fisheries, and identifying the areas of key knowledge and skills. Some of the questions which started to emerge from this were, first of all, is there anything special about fish compared with other forms of food? Clear answer, of course, which everybody in this room knows, is that, well, it's the only significant food system which depends on hunting, primarily depends on and on the status of a natural resource which is not directly managed. One of the things which emerged from the thinking about what we were trying to understand about fisheries was that we would look at benefits, not just supply. And this extends really to the arguments about the social impact of climate change on fisheries, for example. We're looking, and also the ecosystem approach to fisheries. It's not just the stocks, it's also the benefits which are delivered. And in terms of food strategy, it's the food quality, not the calories. Fisheries tends to be disregarded at times because it doesn't count so much in calorie terms globally. Obviously, if we go to proteins and if we go into fatty acids, if we go into maternal and child nutrition, then it changes the picture very strongly. And we're looking at ecosystem services, not specifically extraction. There's a question of defining what are the levels of benefit that might be desired, and what are the minimal levels, what are the acceptable levels, and the trade-offs which would exist. We need to get some idea of the quantities, and one of the things which is being done at the moment is that the World Bank and IFPRI, the International Food Policy Research Institute, are rerunning a model which they developed for forecasting to 2020, the Fisheries 2020 study, to 2030 and possibly 2050, where they're refining the connections, the supply-price interactions with other food commodities, and improving the sense of what the likely demand levels would be for fisheries products. This study, this work is still underway. It's going to be another month or two, I think, before some of the preliminary results come out, but we should get some better ideas. There's a question about market failures, and this is not just in fisheries management, but in other areas, and to see where these need to be addressed. To understand where the crisis and the crunch points are going to be. Is it aquaculture feeds? Is it the collapse of stocks? Is it social upheaval? What are the issues which need to be understood? And then recognizing all the different forces which exist, the different characteristics of the fisheries and aquaculture sector. And I had borrowed a thing from a recent presentation, just demonstrating the different range of characteristics of the sector. So we pulled out a few ideas about capture fisheries, which have been covered elsewhere, and I won't really. It's not really my field anyway, but. The key point about this, I suppose, was the view that over the next 20 to 30 years, we did have the means to deliver a continued output from capture fisheries. The changes that would come about through climate change would not necessarily mean that we would lose substantial output if the fisheries concerned could be managed effectively. So with the right policies, with the right institutions, with the right approaches, that was possible to do. For aquaculture, I'll use the remaining few minutes of my time. There's a wide range of projections and ideas about what might be expected from aquaculture, but the broad story is that we might be looking at something like 70 to 100% increases in output from aquaculture between now and 2050. But you know, the models for that, the population models, the economic, the GDP models, the role of capture fisheries in this, the demand preferences for fish species would all play a part in this. There's a wide range of growth projections. There's going to be an effect of climate change, but again, these are sort of reasonably definable. There's going to be a stronger need to integrate aquaculture with other processes. And we can look at the current distribution of global aquaculture. The overall story is that we would expect aquaculture to more or less be in the same kind of places over the next few decades. We're not going to get dramatic shifts globally. There will be some changes, but not of the order of perhaps 5% of total output rather than 50% of total output. And we can look at the way that these things have changed. The interesting thing is that aquaculture has grown substantially even over the last 5 years. Its growth rate is capable of meeting these intended targets. And Asia is still and is likely to continue to be a dominant force. The interesting thing really is going to be the interaction between the negative climate change impacts around Asia and the potential for growth. But if the major producing countries are in Asia, and the rate of growth in these countries has been quite substantial. We can see other countries which have had very, very high levels of growth over recent years, but most of those, with the exception of Malaysia and Indonesia, don't contribute very strongly to total production. We need to understand the role of aquaculture in value chains more effectively, and one of the interesting things is that the kind of products which are emerging and the way in which fish is used is going to potentially change the kind of demand that we'll have for particular species. To cut to the point, we may be able to use more pangasius, freshwater catfish from Vietnam, and less high-quality marine fish to satisfy large quantities of demand by changing the products. We will probably not see as much expansion in the open oceans as many people talk of. Most of it will occur in inland aquaculture and in some coastal areas. Aquaculture still has higher priced products than capture fisheries. And although there'll be price changes, we're not likely to get a lot of very low cost, low price food coming from aquaculture. There are a lot of social linkages, there's a lot of employment, there's a lot of food to demand, and there is an opportunity to give access to food through aquaculture. So the conclusions are we've got rising prices, it will stimulate growth in the sector. There's going to be greater interaction with terrestrial systems and coastal margins. Sustainable intensification, energy costs and greenhouse gases are going to be increasingly important. We do have strong advantages over meat production. There are a lot of structural changes in the industry, and the role of small producers in the future is going to be a key issue. Climate change winners and losers. A lot of issues also concerning blue carbon and related aquatic stewardship, whether there are going to be prices paid for these things. A lot of issues about food security, research and development. Well, in this community, it's easy to say there's always more research and development needed. And we need greater recognition in the sector and greater understanding of how it works. Thank you.